Dude, Tailwind is used everywhere now. Everybody's using it, from small companies to big companies. Tailwind really has changed the way we work in the front end. But it's ugly. Like, not every time, but oh boy, this component really sucks. Today we go over 7 ways how you can clean that up, how to make Tailwind actually enjoyable. So Tailwind is considered as easy, and that's the reason why things like vanilla CSS or Sass are not used anymore that widely, because you can just go along with Tailwind, write your styles next to your HTML, and the world is great. But the reason why components like this exist is not that Tailwind is ugly by itself. The reason is that you might not know how to clean that all up. So let me show you tip number 1. And tip number 1 is the dry rule. Dry stands for don't repeat yourself. And it basically just means exactly that. So every time you see something that gets repeated, like for example an H1, a paragraph, a button, these are like very bare bone components that are used all over your application. So don't repeat them every time. Just take them, go into your components folder of choice, create a new file, and say this is a H1, or you can better is I think the name title, and then you're good to go. You can just use this title now everywhere. So you have all these styles in one place, and your actual component gets way easier, right? You just have this title with a title. So let's get to tip number 2, because sometimes it's not about components, it's more about the classes itself. So maybe you have classes like flex, and then flex call, item center, justify center. These are classes that will get repeated all over the place. That's not great. We don't want to repeat these classes. So one thing we could do is we could say const position class names and add these class names, and then we can add these class names as a variable, like he's predicting it here. But then this is just scoped to this file. Also not a great solution, because position class names might be used everywhere. So a better approach would be to copy these classes, go into your global CSS, scroll anywhere down where you have space, and then you do a custom positioning, for example. And yeah, cursor is pretty smart here. Then we use this keyword here, add apply. And add apply is just applying these styles to this new custom style. So now all we need to do is to go into the component. Then we can actually delete all these classes, and we can just add this custom positioning. Now we have these classes in our custom positioning, and we can repeat that all over the place, and yeah, have cleaner Tailwind at the end. So tip number 3 is make use of plugins and extensions. And with plugins, I mean Tailwind plugins, and with extensions, I mean VS Code extensions in this case. So if you have a different editor, maybe there's also an extension store, but maybe there's not, then you can skip this point. So when it comes to Tailwind plugins, there's one really good one, and this is the combination of Prettier and Tailwind. So usually Prettier is not adjusting anything in Tailwind. But with this plugin, Prettier plugin Tailwind CSS, if you install that and then you go into your Prettier RC file, if you don't have this file, configure it. Then in your Prettier RC, you have to add this object with settings, and then you can set plugins to Prettier plugin Tailwind CSS. And this is really a game changer, because now if I mess things up here, so I add a margin bottom here, and then I add a padding top right here, this is looking ugly. But if I now click in Option F or whatever is the key at your case for formatting the file, then you will see, boom, it's jumping directly into an order. So every paddings are now together, every margins are now together. And this is just clean, because this makes your Tailwind actually readable. Now it's just easier to understand what's going on. Yeah, other cool plugins you can use is Tailwind CSS Typography or Tailwind CSS Forms. So these are actually official plugins you can use to unuglify your Tailwind. So when it comes to extensions, there are actually some cool ones here. Like, of course, you have Tailwind IntelliSense, and maybe you also have Tailwind Docs, which is cool. Then you have the docs always by hand. But there's another cool one, Tailwind Fold. I personally don't use it, but yeah, you see what it's doing. It's actually folding and unfolding the Tailwind classes. And there are a lot of other options, like partially setting the opacity for the classes, so you can really concentrate on the HTML. I think this is pretty cool and has a lot of potential. So this was cleanup tip 4. Now let's get to cleanup tip 5, which is don't use arbitrary values. What are arbitrary values? Arbitrary values, I say that too often, are values that are looking like this. So with these square brackets here. So 100 VH, 100 VW, or setting border to 3 pixels, setting rounded to 19 pixel. That is ugly. What you could do instead is say H screen here. Here you can say W screen. And here with the pixel values, just use the values that you have here. Especially when it comes to paddings and margins, like 37 pixels here. This is so ugly. Just use these RAM values. So for example, px8, you can hover that and then you see, okay, this is 32 pixels. The benefit of this is that this is using RAM, and RAM has some other benefits. So with accessibility and zooming in the browser and a bunch of stuff, just keep in mind, use the Tailwind values, then you have already a system set it up, and don't use these arbitrary values because they look ugly and they are pretty hard-coded. Alright, and when we talk about hard-coded values, that's exactly tip number 6. Hard-coded values when it comes to colors. Please don't do that. Don't hard-code colors, because therefore you have your global CSS and you can do add theme inline to actually add colors with minus color and then the color. For example, chart 4 here is an actual color. So I could write text chart 4 here, as you can see. So these colors are actually now variables here that are defined for light mode and dark mode. You don't need light mode and dark mode, but please set your colors up right here. This will make your Tailwind much cleaner. And when that all didn't work for you and you still have this big component, then last tip is to document it. So take your classes, put it into a constant and actually document what's going on. This will definitely make your file more maintainable. So this was the last tip. You just learned 7 ways how to make your Tailwind much cleaner and unuglify it. Thanks for watching this video and see you in the next one.